All right, welcome back. We have another great game for you tonight. Season 3, week number 2, Miners game between the Little Noms and the Ferrymen. I am Red Sniper 23. Joining me on the camera tonight is Pollo Yaros, and he is out for right now, but he'll be right back. It's Jeering Lamb. He will be chair number 1 tonight. Looking forward to this matchup. Lil Noms has a lot of expectation on their shoulders going into tonight's game. They had a pretty easy time last week going through their game 2-0, or actually I should say 2-1. The only reason they dropped a game is because they decided that they were going to show up late. Thanks guys for making the predictions all wrong. But this one here between the Little Noms and the Ferrymen, this one is going to be an absolute riot. Um, Again, we get to see the likes of Omega Bulldog, Bad News Bears, Raptor, Hercules, Louie on one side, and then on the other side we've got Satan OMFG, Lemmy, Giannis, and Josh the Landlord, Paps, and Dual Peg Leg. The starting lineups on both sides are absolutely loaded. This one is going to be a great one to get into it as we start to get into picks and bans here in game number 1. So, pretty standard bans starting off right now. It's the set going to be first banned by Little Noms on the order side. Sorry, had to get that right in my head. The Loki take it off the table. It was kind of weird in the SPL today. We did see a Loki first pick. Loki has kind of come into the meta a little bit, especially if there is a jungler who knows how to play him well. That is going to be something to fear, as that Loki can pop up out of nowhere with that dumb invisibility that, no, I am not bitter about whatsoever. But Scylla very strong in the mid lane. Not really surprising there. Cucullin still has that team fighting presence. It's not a surprise there either. And Tiamat, um, between the damage, the defense procs, the minions that can just push a lane without her even being there. Tiamat also very strong right now, and Tyr going to be taken away from Lil Noms as we've got this one going, and it's a first pick insta lock. That looks like it is going to be the Apollo
Another
for
performance already.
Phenoms,
I
and
guess they
indeed it
can't
is
get enough
locked
of
in.
me.
So Apollo is going to be your
Wisdom
first
shall
pick for
be
the
my
Little
shield.
Noms. On the other side, Athena, global alt for global alt,
Gilgamesh
and
incoming!
another very strong pick. It's the Gilgamesh showing up. Really looking forward to this one right now, as the good, strong meta gods that consistently get banned are actually being let through right now, which is a little. It'll be interesting to see how they perform. Many times they're banned out, especially in
You
ranked
shall
games.
not
So we'll see
pass!
if there's a little
Doing
rust.
important
Maybe they've been
things.
doing it in casuals instead. But here is Giannis, looking like that's going to be your mid laner. And Horus can be a little bit of a flex
Come, we
pick.
shall fly
Could be
together!
solo, could be support, probably going to be support in this meta, however. So as we get into the end of the first phase here in picks and bans, we've got Ferryman looking to pick up their third pick here. Gilgamesh is kind of a flex pick too. Could go solo, could go jungle. Um, has the Winds of Shamash to kind of give that big CC area. Has the drop kick, which is, as everybody who has played Smite as of, well, whenever he was introduced, knows by now, is just annoying. He kicks a minion into stun, kicks you into a wall, stun, kicks you halfway across the map into his own team.
You
Now
only
you're dead.
hit
It
what you
just,
aim at.
it's absolutely crazy. As the Chiron going to be locked in, still very strong right now. Bluestone, remember, still has its full power. Transcendence is a little bit more expensive, but Chiron's really not going to worry about that. He's just going to be farming up in lane. As we get into the second phase of bans here, Ferryman will get the first pick. We will see what they decide to have. Looks like it's going to be the Tsukiyomi taken off the table. That'll be the number 4 pick. Or sorry, the number 4 ban for uh the Ferryman. And the number 4 ban for Phenoms going to be the E-set. That is interesting. Um, don't know if that's quite meta. And the last ban going to be the Daji for the Ferrymen. So we have a Tsukiyomi and a Daji, so focusing on that jungle. And then still waiting on the last ban from Phenom or from Little Noms here. Um, we'll see how this one kind of pans out, as it looks like it's going to be indeed it is the Achilles. So they're thinking that that Gilgamesh is probably a solo lane, or sorry, is a jungler, not a solo laner. And so they take away the Achilles because he also has that flexibility into the jungle or into the solo lane, but also has an execute. So want to make sure that the Giannis, Apollo, or Horus
Your
isn't just
time
blown
has
away
come.
instantly. And it looks like we have the Morrigan picked up. Now that could be a mid lane pickup, that could be a jungle pickup. We have seen them in both. We have seen the Morrigan played on both sides. However, probably more of a mid lane, at least at this point in the contest. My guess would be going mid lane. We'll see what happens with that last pick. As again, there's a lot of flex here, a lot of flex here on the side of the Ferryman. So waiting on the last two here. We'll see what happens, as it looks
May
like
the gods of Valkyrie
indeed
surround
the
you!
Nordic pair going to be dropped in and locked
Time to
in,
round.
and that is the Odin and the Fenrir. So the big dog gonna eat tonight, as Fenrir gonna get out on the table here, and Odin dropping that cage, as right now Gilgamesh can get out. Athena could get out with her ult. Morrigan, if she uses her ult, she can get out. But the Chiron gonna have a problem. Sun
Woohoo!
Wukong can easily get out with his ult as well. So we'll see what happens if that Odin cage is going to be as effective as they want it to be. But here it is, and so it is going to be uh, looks like it is going to be the Athena support. The Sun Wukong is going to flex into the solo lane, and the Gilgamesh going to be your jungler as of right now, with Morrigan in the mid. So this one looking like it's going to be a banger right away. So just to give you a little clue, if you haven't heard the podcast yet, the episode is out on YouTube and hopefully will be out on Spotify within the next 24 hours. But for those of you who have not heard, the both Jerbear and Skeet predicted a 2-0 for Skeet and a 2-1 for Jeremy victory for Lil Noms. I went the other way with Ferryman. Um, just have something in the back of my mind that Ferryman could actually pull this one out. And I went 2-1 towards the Ferryman. So let's see what we've got here, as we'll see if the predictions come true or if we're just blowing some steam. So
I am
let's
officially
see.
back, and I see Morgan, Gilgamesh, Sun Wukong, Athena, and Chiron on one team, and I am very curious on what happened in picks and bans.
Yeah, there's some very
Oh,
interesting things that have been happening with picks and bans.
um, looks like I've missed a lot.
Well, you have missed,
Oh,
let's see. You've missed picks and bans so far, which isn't too bad, so to speak. But Apollo was the first pick. Kind of interesting seeing the Loki as the first ban on the side of the Ferryman. Scylla being taken away, that insta blow up damage. Again, Scylla might not be the quote unquote strongest in the meta, but is definitely a damage dealer par excellence. So
and I've seen a lot of people playing Scylla, especially in Kraken Smite League and other leagues similar. If you get the right person with their hands on Scylla, you can obliterate a lobby. Her burst potential is absolutely insane.
yeah, and it looks like maybe somebody potentially forgot to hit low spectate mode, but it's okay. We'll eventually get into this one. Hopefully, this just means that the game will load for us, and we won't have as many stasis modes, because after all, Smite code, Spaghetti code, but best game, right?
Hashtag low res diff.
right?
I've said it before and I will say it again. Low res diff.
So
And
just to
basically,
let you guys
fans.
know, we're gonna be remaking the lobby. It's going to be the same gods though. However, there was one small problem. Um, as he was flipping through things, he didn't realize that the Gilgamesh skin that Bears was on is actually banned. It He was flipping through skins and it stuck him on a Monster Cat skin, which is banned as of right now. So we're gonna stay on the picks and bans screen until this game is reformed. Don't worry about it. But during, I don't know if you've seen the podcast, or I should say, have heard the podcast yet.
The
Um,
second episode I have not had time to. I just got into my new apartment yesterday,
okay,
and I've been preoccupied with everything. I'm
okay. So
I'm
just
running
to
through the
catch
list.
you up a
That
little bit here.
Gilgamesh that Gilgamesh skin is not on our ban list.
Monster Cat
Unless
skins are
it's
still technically banned.
doesn't I don't see him on here. Maybe I'm just missing something. Oh, I see it now. Never mind, never mind. I see it. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Um, so we discussed this on the podcast. Skeet was very, very pro phenoms in this, obviously.
I wonder
And
why.
decided to go, yeah, and decided to go 2-0 in favor of Little Noms at this
Ooh.
one. Jer was a little bit more middle of the road, but still liked Little Noms 2-1 in this one. Um,
Mm,
I actually went the other direction and went Ferrymen 2-1. Um, I think we're in the I think we are in the sights of a 3-game set here.
I
What
believe
is
so too.
your thoughts, and maybe on what are your thoughts, and maybe what's your prediction on this one?
I am expecting to see a 2-1 for the Ferrymen because if anybody in the chat was here a while back when my team actually played against the Ferrymen, we got we 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 had a rough game. We had a very rough set. The Ferrymen were beautiful in their teamwork. Their synergy was on point. They stuck together. They did everything that they needed to do. They did everything that a team should be doing. And they
Hmm.
played beautifully and they were absolute monsters to face against. And I certainly think that they can do it again against the Phenoms because I have heard all of them talking about how they are psyched up for this. Are they are ready. They're prepared to go into this and they have a good mindset already. They're ready for this matchup. They're they're eager to face off against the Lil Noms, which everybody's been hyping up to be pretty much the best team in the mini leagues for a while now that everybody's been talking about.
Hmm.
Personally, I think the Ferrymen have been giving a much more beautiful display of teamwork and synergy.
I mean, and that's really what it comes down to in this game. It's gonna be the individual talent, I think, on the side of Little Noms. That kind of is how they're gonna have to work through. They're gonna have to work through the Giannis and the Apollo this time. They're gonna be able to try and push a small advantage and make it bigger. Because if you wait until the late game, or if you wait until even the mid game where you're going to end up having to deal with an Athena that's going to make a 2v2 or a 3v3 a 4v3 or a 3v2, I mean, that's going to be a problem later on. Chiron just works so well in the mid to late game. Maybe not the very late game, but the mid to late game when that transition starts happening, he starts getting his shred in. I'm really looking forward to this one. I like the comp of Ferryman on this one. I can see how the Lil Noms could definitely do some damage, but uh, m- maybe it's just me. I like the front to back more from Ferryman than I do from Lil Noms right now. And I think that coordination that you were talking about is really going to be the key here between the two sides. I mean, let's not discount Little Noms. Their individual talent is phenomenal. There's a reason why people have been talking them up to be number one. But I think Ferryman I put them as number 2 on my tier list, or as my on my power rankings, and I think a lot of these players are right there with them. I think this is going to be an excellent battle between the two, and who knows, this could be a finals matchup. This could be a the battle between the 1 and 2 seed. This could be a really really close game, I think.
I certainly agree. Absolutely. The Lil Noms have an incredibly gifted lineup. All of their players have shown time and time again that they know exactly what they're doing. They know how to play this game, and they can prove it to you at pretty much any point in the day. They are not afraid to show up in force and tell you, "I know what I'm worth." It goes without saying that they know that. I also think that the Ferrymen are also more than capable of doing the exact same thing. They are prepared to take on this supposed beast and show just how powerful of a knight they can be.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great one. Many people have said that these are probably that these teams especially are in the top 3 or even the top 2 in the minors. Um, and this one is just I'm really looking forward to this one. Maybe it's just me, but I'm really looking forward to this one specifically tonight. Um, I think Phenoms and Reapers is also going to be a good game from the majors this week. I think Archon Dragons and Phantoms are going to be a good game this week. Um, but I think this is probably going to be the matchup of the week. And I know it's like, well, it's just a minors game. No, it's not just a minors game. This I think is one of the most talented lineups in either side. Just to say, you know what, we're going to throw these people in on a draft league. We're going to have them all go at each other, and let's just see what happens. And I think that's kind of i- what we're getting geared up for here. As we're about to go into game, things are starting to get set up here between the Ferrymen and the Little Noms. And at this point, I will have you take it away, jeering.
As we're going into this, some of the things that I'm looking at are not just the total team fight potential that they all have together, the amazing synergy that both teams have been displaying multiple times, but I'm also interested in looking at just the laning and seeing how is that going to end up turning out. Because on the Ferryman, we have Chiron and Athena, two insanely high pick and ban rate gods. And they have shown time and time again that no matter whose hands they're in, those gods can be trouble. Whereas on the Lil Noms, we see Apollo and Horus, two very good gods that I think a lot of people sleep on a little bit. They have insane power, especially the Apollo. During finals last season, I think I showed just how powerful Apollo can really be. He most certainly has the capability to stand up to a Chiron. And especially with Josh on the Giannis, Josh is a very talented mid laner, and especially when he gets his hands on the Giannis, he can absolutely obliterate your team in the blink of an eye. He comes out of the wall, takes away half your health, and then disappears right again. Morgan is also another god to be very careful of. She can put out a lot of damage really quickly, especially in that late game that you were talking about earlier. Because with a Sun Wukong, that is also a very great tool for teamfight setup, especially with his ult. That can give him a little bit of zoning to force people to play a little bit more safe.
And
As we
honestly, I think if we go taking a look at the battle that was happening in Soul Lane, I think that is going to be the big challenge right now. Is that Soul Lane? We've got a Sun Wukong versus an Odin, but the real matchup, the real teeth behind this thing, is Satan OMFG against Omega Bulldog. As we have a battle going on and a gate coming out already.
The Fenrir is already popping that Brutalize on that Chiron, who's already very low HP, as now Athena has to try and get out of it, as she's already below quarter HP. Beautiful game coming out from the Fenrir. Very well timed, as we see the Sun Wukong getting a lot of damage on this Odin now. He's now quarter HP after retreat under his tower. And going to throw out the stun to try and get the Simukong off. Bulldog is a very, very powerful solo. He knows what he's doing. Gilgamesh drop, trying to get rid of that Fenrir, but he's got out of position. Pabs will end up securing that kill onto the Gilgamesh. Now will be our first blood of the night.
So again, trying to get off on the right foot, and unfortunately the drop kick does not connect. And uh-oh, here comes Hercules getting in trouble again, and that one is going to be the Athena falling. And, ooh, that's just barely making it under the tier 2. And he is going to stay alive, but that also means that as the rotations begin early in this one, 2 minutes in, we already got 2 kills by the Noms. That's going to kind of set back this duo lane, and it's so difficult, especially in this new patch, that if you go behind in duo lane, it's so hard to keep up that pressure. Before with boots, you could build the boots early, and you could try and gain some of that mobility so that you could gain the farm back while somebody else was trying to stack their stuff early. But now, because there's no boots, you don't have that early power spike, and now you're just kind of stuck.
And I think it's especially impactful with a Horus and Apollo. Everybody loves talking about how powerful Chiron can be in the early game, especially in the pressure that he can get in the laning phase. But Apollo and Horus are a dangerous duo. Both of them alone can create a lot of damage and setup for the team, or just the duo lane itself, especially in those early lane phases. They are definitely a duo to be watching out for. Now we're going to be shifting over to the solo lane. Once again, we got Bulldog at level 5, where Satan will end up hitting as he's got a little bit of wave pressure. He's taking a little bit of damage. He's now on his own as the Odin jump will come out. Bulldog is now getting a little bit low, quarter HP. He's going to have to back off as that stun hitting. The axe does take a bit out of him. He's going to be forced to pop that ult, as Josh will end up picking up the kill in mid lane on the Morgan. Raptor does end up falling with a low HP Giannis left behind.
Yeah, unfortunately, the scraps on the table are not going to be able to be picked up by the jungler, as the Gilgamesh is just going to try and hold the wave there, clear it out to gain the XP himself. But the little advantages are starting to come through. We'll see if that continues as, uh-oh, here comes another gank. And the Fenrir makes himself available.
Not able to get away from the brutalize. It is a very, very powerful ability if somebody doesn't have that lead to get away from it. So we see a lot of damage coming out on the Bulldog now. Once again, Sun Wukong being forced to back away from this Odin, putting out quite a bit of damage with that axe and the fighter's start. Very, very... That is a lot of power that comes in early.
Yeah, Renga's Mask is definitely one of those things where you are looking for the aggression early. So you built the mask, you have Warrior's Axe as well to give you a little bit more sustain and a little bit more power in that lane. But as Wukong does go back, he is going to grab the Soul Eater first, meaning not only is he going to have the Blue Stone power, but now he's going to have the sustainability of the Soul Eater, as his abilities now are going to heal him. And when you Wukong rotation on somebody, and you just throw out all 4 abilities, that is a lot of damage.
And it's a lot of healing too. It can make it very difficult to deal with him, especially if he's a level or 2 ahead of you. You can be quite a powerful. As we see the Odin Gauge coming out, locking in, he's going to be forced to pop that ult immediately, as Fenrir is now popping up as well. That clone got shredded. Did not last long at all.
Not too bad, though. Ult for ult, so you got Odin Cage and the Wukong Somersault Cloud, so both ults are going to be gone. But that also means that both of them are going to be susceptible to a gank, so we'll see if Fenrir wants to stay around on the solo side, or if there's going to be something a little bit more, as the Apollo ult going to be used by the Morrigan to get out of dodge there. So again, Raptor saying, this is something I need to do. Uh-oh. As the blink comes in, and here comes Giannis, and bye-bye. And that is a Fenrir that is hungry.
Once again, as we'll actually see the Horus ult. I'm sorry?
Horus went up and came back down.
Horus had a little up-down moment there.
Yeah.
That's...
So I think he was going to try and save the Fenrir, because the Fenrir was trying to back near the Ferryman Phoenixes.
Yeah, between the two T2s, yeah.
Yeah, so he popped the ult just to be on the safe side in case he needed to go over to help. But the Fenrir was able to get out without much of a problem.
Speaking of ults, we see Gilgamesh coming out to try and secure that Greater Scorpion, but it won't end up happening as we now have a 3v3 fight. Fenrir will be dragging, excuse me, will be dragging Bears back into that fight. As Apollo is now getting about 3rd HP, he's going to have to be backing off as Raptor is in the area looking to throw out a little bit more damage, but Fenrir is here to make sure that does not happen.
I mean, I really got to give credit to Little Noms so far. They are 6 kills up, but on top of that, where is all of that going? It's going straight into the jungler and into the Apollo. The Apollo we know is a very good late game god if you build him that way. And right now, that's where it's going. As the ultimate comes out, Pegleg is going to go down, but that also means that he's not going to have it there, and he is going to get secured as well.
Turns out to be a 1-for-1 trade for both ADCs. Though, in favor of the Ferrymen, that is a little bit of a shutdown bonus.
Yeah, so the Apollo goes from 2-0-3 to a 2-1-3. First kill on the board now for Ferrymen. Interesting, we see both the Apollo and the Chiron decide to go starter item Transcendence. Especially with the attack speed meta, we see bow builds coming in, other little variations on the builds, but they are sticking with the Transcendence for that power and mana to kind of get them through so far in the early game. Gold difference and XP difference squarely in favor of the Little Noms at 2,500 approximately with both. And we're only 8.5 in.
This is turning to be quite an early lead for the Little Noms. They are coming out in force in the first few minutes of this game, as we see the Athena ult now coming out on the second column, trying to get that Odin off of the Soul Laner. Hercules is actually dashing in to continue fighting Satan, as we do see the Fenrir coming in. Gilgamesh is also right there. Odin Cage is going to end up being dropped, trying to force out this little team fight, give him just enough time, but it won't be enough to get out.
There's the Giannis ult as well. So now we're looking at a 2-for-1. So that is a good trade for Ferrymen. They now know that both the Giannis ultimate and the Apollo ult, or the Apollo ult just being used there, but the Odin ult and the Giannis ult going to be utilized. And now here comes Pegleg trying to find something, can't go down on anything, so he is going to go down under his tier 2 tower. And now that's the Apollo ult taken off the table, and that's got a very long cooldown.
It does. That turns out to be a 1-for-3 ultimate trade across the board. And it's going to turn 1-for-4 as we see, or excuse me, 2-for-3 as we see Horus ult coming out.
The big issue now, though, is you have a 4-man rotation onto the Gold Fury. They are shredding it little by little. Here comes the Morrigan. The Morrigan's going to dive in. Yeah.
Beautiful drop. Perfectly done.
It's going to be tough, though. They're still... They didn't drop it. As Little Noms will secure the Gold Fury, but let's see if Giannis can get out of it. And Satan is going to have to pop the Odin shield. Here comes the taunt, and it looks like, no, he's going to try and get out of it, as the Giannis will throw the unstable vortex to help zone out. Omega Bulldog says, guys, I'm just going to grab the tier 1 over here and just keep pushing my advantage, because as long as I can stay ahead of the Odin, it means I get to rotate later. And yes, we gave up a Gold Fury, but maybe we get a Fire Giant instead then.
That is true. And it's paying off a little bit as we see the Sun Wukong now 2 levels ahead of that Odin. And in the jump, we actually see Gilgamesh being 1 level ahead of the Fenrir, which is very interesting. There's been so much XP going around on the Lil Noms, but it's now only about 1,500 in favor of them, while the gold difference is still now 2,700 in favor of the Lil Noms. But their
honestly,
XP lead has been going a lot to Josh on the Giannis and Pegleg on the Apollo.
I mean, honestly, the The difference so far for me in this game is the play of the junglers. When you look at, little Nom's gonna come in on Omega Bulldog, but the extra protections onto the Sun Wukong are gonna mean that Omega Bulldog is gonna end up just fine as, oh, maybe the Horus here is gonna get caught out. He's gonna have to dash away. He's gonna get hit a few times. That means his HP will drop a little bit. But again, the Horus healing in the kit, not a big
it's
issue.
Horus.
As Draugr being picked up here by the Ferrymen.
It's going to be a very important and helpful buff, as we do see through space time coming out onto that Pyromancer to try and steal it, and we see a little bit of low health bars coming out, and the Ferrymen will end up securing that Pyromancer, but now they've got low health bars they have to try and get out, as we see the Apollo will come out. Gilgamesh trying to save the Athena, but not in time. He will end up falling. Paz will end up securing Raptor in the mid lane. That is a very unfortunate drop, as we'll now see a third pickup onto Gilgamesh. They may have secured that Pyromancer. They may have won that, but at what cost?
Well, and let's see, because that means the Fire Giant is going to be available for Lil Noms. And again, what we saw is this really difficult, the Wukong is here. And you know as well as I that one of the things that could definitely secure that Fire Giant could be, never mind. Well, I was gonna say,
I saw
the magic cudgel. Yeah, I mean, the magic cudgel could definitely come into play, but not when you're sitting there with gray screen coming from the fountain.
It was a valiant effort, but in that situation, there was so much damage. Actually, as we see Raptor ulting in, the Apollo as Morgan will end up falling to Peg Leg.
Yeah, I think he was trying to catch out.
I didn't even see him coming in.
Yeah, I think he was trying to catch them out as they were backing, and unfortunately 3 of them were right there, and they were able to collapse on him quite easily. I'm kind of... Oh, it's through space and time is going to be there, and oh man, that hurts. That beautiful play you were talking about earlier, that coordination that we kind of were expecting, maybe it's just the jitters, maybe it's just the rust, but this is something that, you know, the Ferrymen have got to kind of sit back and go, okay, guys, we understand we're down. Let's try and get the little advantages we can right now, because this is really, really tough game for them. Again, Omega Bulldog is still up a level. Yes, there is a huge advantage in both XP and...
he does not have a gauge. He does have the Athena coming out, but it's now 3-2. The Athena is going to be getting low HP as well as the Sun Wukong. Athena ends up falling first, as we see Gilgamesh trying to come out and starting to save them to get them out. Bulldog is able to escape. Bears is not in the same position. He's taking a lot of damage under tower with no mana, so he can't jump out of that one. And they're just going to continue diving 1v3 into that tower. There was nothing left for Bears. Unfortunately, he will end up falling.
Yeah, kind of a tough one right now, as it looks like the tier 2 in left is going to fall. Not quite yet, but it's going to take some significant damage from Peg Leg here. As Terminator is going to get some nice poke onto Peg Leg. However, with the wave coming, he's going to have to clear. And the split pushing Apollo, I know it's kind of a meme at this point, but the split pushing Apollo is going to be very effective with this specific team comp, because you can have 4 members strong rotating around. They've got good secure, they've got good front line and back line, and the Apollo can just ult in without a problem.
Sorry, I gotta stop you right there, Red.
Yep.
Sorry, you said split push Apollo is a meme? I'm sorry, where have you been?
I don't know if if you've actually seen or been in ranked games lately, but if the Apollo is actually able to be played, 9 times out of 10, your Apollo is going to be split pushing. And if he's not split pushing, he's thinking about split pushing. So, yeah,
I know for a fact that's true, because if you remember last season in one of our sets, or one of my sets, excuse me, I was the split pushing Apollo, and I took T2, Phoenix, and Titan in a single push.
Yes, you did.
Speaking of
I
pushes, we
remember
actually
that.
see Horus all coming out, as we got a big grouping coming onto this mid T2 tower. We're gonna be gunning for this last T2 tower, as we see the Apollo taking out the left Phoenix. Yep, there he goes. Phoenix gonna try and rotate to stop it. But will it be in time, as the Phoenix did take all the way and some damage? The T2 tower on the one, as we see Gilgamesh will come out onto this Apollo. There's a 3-1, and now it's going to be turning into a big headwind, as we see Venron coming out to try and drag Bad News Bears down to the grave, and he will end up falling, as we see Raptor ulting as the Apollo to try and get there in time to save Phoenix and help the team out. But there's not a whole lot left to ult. It's going to be a little bit of a reset here, as we see the Chiron beads being forced out. Bulldog is going to be just wreaking a little bit of havoc on the field. They are going to have to really consider how they're going to play this defense, as the left Phoenix will end up falling. Now, Ferrymen are in a dangerous situation. Fire Giant is not far off at all, and they just lost left Phoenix.
Yeah, it's the best possible scenario for Little Noms right now. You push the left Phoenix, you drop that one down, you start getting fire minions that are going to push that left lane, and now you can squarely think about fighting over the Fire Giant and securing that. And then you've got the ability to go right into that right lane where there is no tier 2 tower, push for the Phoenix, and you try and end the game that way. We'll see if that's what they're going to be able to accomplish, but as of right now, the Ferrymen have to be split with their attention. They've got to somehow either defend Fire Giant and make sure that their base is going to stand at least through that buff, but they've also got to worry about the fire minions that are now coming down the left lane, and that could be a serious problem if they don't clear them out.
Especially since that's already pushing up to where the old T2 tower used to be. As we see the Odin Blink coming out, I think is going to end up taunting it back towards the team to get more set up. Fenrir's going to end up jumping in and ulting as the Odin Gauge does come out. A lot of damage being forced on Raptor. He's going to end up falling to the Horus. Pab's doing a little bit more damage than Raptor was prepared to handle, as we see a lot of dives coming out. Giannis through space. The Diamond's going to end up coming out. He's going to end up securing the kill on the Chiron. You also get the double kill on the Hercules on that Athena. And
yep, here it comes.
They're calling the end, yeah. We see the Apollo ult, the Yonder portal. They're just going to the end here.
Yep, they don't even need the Fire Giant at this point. Winds of Shamash do come out. But honestly, Recon...
It's a very powerful tool to try and zone here, but it's not going to be powerful enough. It's 2v5.
No, and that's the biggest problem, is it is a 2v5. Those 3 kills in quick succession, that close to the base, it means the end of it. And that means that Lil Noms will take a 1-0 victory here. Or a 1-0 lead, I should say. Not a victory yet, but a 1-0 lead here in the set. Gold difference, XP difference, right around the 11k and 12k. And as we look at the ending screens here, yeah, I mean, something interesting. Satan was the soul laner, and he was 0-0 and 10. But he did exactly what he did exactly what his team asked him to do, which was be a tanky frontliner for us. Yes, you're not going to get. Yeah, you're not going to get the kills. You're not going to get the most damage. I mean, he only did 7k, but he was there when they needed him to, and he dropped those Odin cages. He was very effective in what he did. On the flip side of that, though, and yes, as Poyo is highlighting here, the 3k player healing by Paps on that Horus, which is just phenomenal. But on the flip side here, that was a tough one. Omega and Herc and Raptor, kind of that core of that team, even Bears there, just trying to do something. And I think that's probably the best way to put it. They were trying to do something. But I don't think it was the most coordinated. And I think, and maybe this is just me, but it seemed like they were trying too hard. You know, those games where, you know, something's got to happen and it's got to be done. And so you're the one that's like, I'm going to take this game, I'm going to put it on my back, and I'm just going to try and, you know, carry the team. and I think all of them were trying to do it at the same time. We kind of saw that a little bit with Raptor and his selection of ultimates. We saw it a little bit with the Wukong trying to pick certain fights. And I thought, to be honest, I thought Omega played that Wukong very, very well. The only real slip up he had was towards that Fire Giant at the end. Um, but every time you saw, and this is probably something that ferrymen have to look at, you saw little Noms being the initiators, but at the same time, you had that reaction coming from the ferrymen, and that reaction ultimately hurt them in the end. They were late to fights. The rotations weren't quite there. Um, we'll see because ferrymen have a lot of experienced players there. Maybe they'll be able to calm everything down. They've knocked the rust off. They said, "Okay, this is where we're in. We're playing with the big dogs now. Let's see what can happen in game 2."
I earlier before the game started, you were or no, it was at the beginning of the game. Pardon me. You were talking about a little bit of rust that they had to shake off. It didn't quite seem the way that it has, and I think you are absolutely right. The Ferrymen have done an amazing job of playing the game exactly the way you would want a team to be playing. And to me, it looked like in this game, that team synergy that they've had, it did not appear to be showing up quite the way one might expect. I think one thing to note is that the Lil Noms have an insanely powerful early laning phase. The raw talent of their players is very, very tough to match. I, it, to me, it just feels like they were looking for a little bit more of that early aggression, but when they didn't quite get it, they weren't quite prepared to play that more passive late game. So I think going into this game too, it might be a important consideration of playing very passive and just waiting for that late game. The early game just did not go the way that they were hoping for, and I think it really killed them.
Yeah, the tough thing about that though is even waiting for the late game. I mean, look at who they had. The They were trying to play up against an Apollo, who is a very good late game god. They tried playing up against a Horus, who just gets stronger and stronger as the game goes on. Chiron kind of falls off a little bit. You're trying to play an Athena, who gets a little less tanky as the game goes on. It's really tough for them to play late game with that kind of a comp, and I think
I
that was kind of telling.
I, I don't believe that comp was picked for their late game, but I think going into the game too, I think that type of comp might be worthy of consideration for spending the Giannis. Yeah, that's
Yep.
something I
So as
expected
we're
to see.
going into, sorry, I was
Josh,
gonna
Josh, sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say we are going into picks and bans, by the way, now for game number 2 between the Phenoms and the Ferrymen. Ferrymen now on the order side of things. Go
First
ahead.
banning that Giannis, definitely a good call. Josh has he's proven that he is a monster on Giannis. There's no other way to put it. He when he gets his hand on Giannis, he will take control of the lobby. And they'll actually respond by banning a Loki. Ferryman will ban the Apollo as well, and the Lil Noms will ban the Set. All very, very
Yeah.
strong picks. I think the double respect ban is also warranted. They are very, very powerful gods, especially in the hands that we saw them in. Peg leg on the Apollo is very tough to get around.
Yeah.
He knows exactly how to play that, and especially with Josh on Giannis.
Yeah, having that double global presence between the two there, um, especially getting rid of the Apollo, I agree. It's almost necessary at this point, especially with seeing how well Pegleg was able to take that god and maneuver him around the map. Gilgamesh also now going to be taken off. And is the Cucullin going to be the last ban here for the Little Noms? So
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Ferrymen have the Gilgamesh last game?
the Ferryman did have the Gilgamesh last game.
I'm a
And I
monster!
think they're kind of realizing that that's not who they want to pick up. So they can't let it fall into the hands of the Little Noms. And the spice begins already. Scylla picked up with the Anubis on the other side.
And Chiron will
You
actually
only
be the
hit
second pick
what you
for the
aim
Lil
at.
Noms. So far, the Ferryman going with the Scylla, that's very, very powerful late game god.
Not only
Absolutely
that, but in the
flame
hands of
burst.
Raptor.
Yeah, it's safe to say he knows how to play mid.
Oh yeah. I mean
But
the Scylla in the hands of the Raptor is really, really good. It's
bad
probably
bad
one
news
of his better gods in mid.
bad news bears is hovering the Tsukiyomi right now, and Omega is actually looking at the Odin. He will lock in the Odin as
May the
well,
gods of
and we
Valkyrie
see the
surround
The
Tsukiyomi get
you!
moon
locked
will
in too.
purify this
Both
land.
are Tsukiyomi has been a very consistently strong god. He has the tools in his kit to make things happen. He can build the structures that he needs to and support up his team to where they can play what they need to in that early game. But the Odin we saw last game did absolutely phenomenal. Just the zoning from the cage, just forcing people to burn their jumps or their ults just to get away from that alone, which
Mhm.
then left them vulnerable to the rest of the team going in on them. It very well could be a very impactful pick on the Ferrymen this time as well, as we saw the backline had a hard time dishing out damage. The sheer amount of damage that they took early was hard to get around, and Giannis will end up locking in that
I
Tiamat.
should have created a world that you do not exist in.
Wow, this is gonna
Yeah.
be this is gonna be a wild ride as we see the ferrymen with the Scylla, Tsukiyomi, and Odin, and on the Lil Noms we see Anubis, Chiron, and Tiamat.
I mean, just
Wow,
thinking about this from an analysis point of view right now, um, the Odin cage is really, really good. Tiamat can't get out of it, Chiron can't get out of it, Anubis can't get out of it. Um, but that being said, Tiamat doesn't need to get out of the Odin cage if she's got the extra defense on her, if you're playing that way. Chiron can go into his ultimate, and as long as he gets a kill, he's still alive, cage or not. And Anubis can be just as annoying inside the cage with all the stupid circles and lines that he puts down that it sometimes you just don't want to be in the same cage as the Anubis. So as the support band's coming out now for Lil Noms, the aggressive supports, the Ymir and the Sobek going to be taken away, as well as the Fenrir
Fenrir
and the
and
Awelix
Obelix.
now. So
This
the
is
Awelix
actually,
actually is a good ban. I like
I
the
think
Awelix
so,
ban.
yes, because that stops the Odin jump
You
and the
are
slow dashing
finished!
away gets
Yep.
it can actually get pulled out of that too, as we see the Lil Noms will actually opt for Achilles.
Yep. So again, Achilles can be played tanky, can be played hybrid, but has that execute on his ultimate that makes him so dangerous. Um
Looks like the lobby crashed.
yeah, looks like Smite game best game right now. As the spaghetti code is definitely yeah, it definitely came through here. So hang on one second. We will try and get you back in here as best we can. Again, just trying to get things back to where they were in the proper state. Um, we shall see how this is
Oh,
going to go
hashtag
through.
low
But
res diff. I don't know how many
yep,
times I gotta say it.
low res diff indeed. Um,
I, I don't know how
oh
many times
boy,
I'm gonna have to say it.
right?
Maybe we should all just take to Twitter and just start tweeting that every day until it gets fixed.
Just low res diff. Low res diff.
Hashtag low
Just
res diff on Twitter.
we'll do it. We'll do it to high res. We'll do it to Smite game, and we'll do it to Smite Pro every single day. All
All
three of
of
those
them.
accounts. Just hashtag low res diff.
Someday, eventually, they will notice.
Yeah.
But we are gonna need
Um.
your help with this one, chat. You, you guys
Yeah.
gotta do
Right.
it with us.
Oh man. This is just tough. Ooh. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, this is just a tough one. Um. We'll see what's going to happen here if they're going to go into a blind pick. I think they'll probably go back into a regular picks and bans, and just mirror what they had previously. Um, but again, that's what happens when the lobby gets bugged and crashes on you. We'll get you back in as soon as we possibly can, but this is completely out of our control right now. Um, yeah. Which, by the way, I'm going to take this time. If you haven't yet, while you're waiting, you can always plug into the QSL podcast now on YouTube, episode 2 for season 3. And then hopefully by the end of tomorrow, maybe today, but probably tomorrow, episode 2 for season 3 will be up onto Spotify. Um, so for those who are wondering, what am I going to do with all this extra time on my hands? Episode 1, which is our preview looking into the season, had a really, really good look at the teams, how the draft went, and kind of our predictions for week 1, and maybe how things were going to kind of pan out. Um, but episode 2 discusses the results from week 1. There was some controversy going on. We're not going to get into that here. But then there was also our predictions for week 2. Um, we were expecting to have the regular podcast crew plus a special guest. Unfortunately, Cooter was unable to make it, so it was myself, Jerbear, and Skeet, and all three of us laid down our predictions of all 8 games for week number 2. So we are really looking forward to this one coming up, and it looks like it's going to be a blind pick. So we are just going to go right into it. So the Tiamat, Achilles, Anubis, and Chiron are all set up and ready to go. It is going to be a Soul
So
and a
it's Cerberus.
Cerberus. And the last pick is going to be an Uller. So you wait, huh?
Wait. Let's
That's
just
an
take a
Anubis
breather here.
mid. That is a Chiron jungle. That is an
Are you sure
Achilles
about that?
support. That
Look who. Let's look at who picked them. Pegleg on the older carry, Josh the
Oh
landlord,
wait, no.
Chiron
That's an
mid.
Anubis
That is
jungle?
Anubis jungle, Satan OMFG, Tiamat solo, Paz with the Achilles support.
Oh.
Oh lord.
Something smells rotten in the state of Denmark. That's all I'm gonna say. Because I swear, if Little Noms wins with this comp, I am gonna have to investigate every single one of them because this is ridiculous. Oh my goodness. Anubis jungle. I swear. I'm just.
I wholeheartedly approve.
Oh.
This is going to be a very controversial statement,
This
but I approve of
this
it.
this is physically painful for me. This is physically painful for me. It's not as bad as my pet peeves, and jeering, don't you dare say them. Um, we had this discussion in caster chat earlier today about pet peeves, and what my pet peeves are specifically. Um, but yeah, this one, oh, this one,
I know off the top of my head 3 immediately that I could say.
No, no, don't you dare. Don't do this to me, man. Don't do this to me. Um,
Kittens, come on. Where's the support? Where's the support for Ferrymen? Come on, come on. They still have a chance.
uh, hey, it ain't over. It ain't over until the. Yeah, don't you dare. It ain't over until the Titan falls. So let's make sure that we got to give both teams their due because you got to remember last week Omega Bulldog not only beat won against Urian Lane, he absolutely owned Urian Lane. So we're definitely looking at teams that are not exactly pushovers here. And I think I had Little Noms as 1 and I had Ferryman as 2. Um so we'll see what happens here. But we are getting into game number 2 between the Little Noms and the Ferrymen. Here we go. Jeering, take it away. As the pings are starting already.
This is gonna be a lot of fun to watch. And Anubis jungle up against this level. I think this plays into their strength perfectly. I think the Lunons are actually really well set up for this fight. That is an insane amount of early pressure and high damage output on every single one of them, which they are all more than capable of putting out. As we all saw in the previous game, they can certainly take advantage of it and push it to the max. They started getting a little bit of a lead early on last game, and they just took it away. They took it all the way to the end zone.
Yeah, we'll see how this is going to work. I mean, I predict this game is definitely going to be closer than it was last game. I think that some of the things that were concerning, deeply concerning about Ferrymen are going to be not as concerning in this one. I think they're going to be able to adjust quite well. As it looks like, kind of expected, Herc and Term are going to get a little bit into lane a little bit late. But we'll see if that early pressure can come through against the Uller and Achilles. Already going to... Wow. The blink already. The very early aggression. But using the blink already means, I mean, he's not going to have it available if he absolutely needs it later. And we're seeing this duo lane here. The early pressure, especially onto Herc. Not necessarily onto Terminator right now, but with Herc there, it's very, very, whoa. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, the Tiamat solo lane there getting stunned out, and that is a very, very early aggression onto the Tiamat. And here comes Yanis with the invade, with the gank, and that is going to be first blood now in favor of Lil Noms. But is the return going to happen? Nope. Bad News Bears kind of says, I can't push this one. They've already got vision. Let's just back away and try and grab some farm. Yeah.
Switching over mid lane, Chiron going up against the Scylla. That is going to be a little bit rough for the Scylla. Trying to get that early game and get that pressure. Make it to that late game where she thrives so well. It's going to be difficult because Chiron excels at pressing the lead that he picks up early on.
Yeah, we'll see how this one goes. The Scylla gonna have a tough time in mid. The Soul gonna have a very difficult time in this duo lane. As long as the Serb can use his aggression in a timely manner, I think he could be able to pressure out this Tiamat early. It's just gonna be really tough later on when she has an ultimate where she's literally just going to be spawning minions at you constantly.
Or not to mention, popping her ground stance ultimate, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden she has 60% damage mitigation.
Yeah.
Happily.
And you're just kind of sitting there going, I guess I can wait till it's done? Maybe. No, we'll just walk away. Is something that Terminator's going to have to think about here on the Soul, and it's not something that maybe many, I guess you'd say mid to lower level players think about, is the heat management on Soul. Getting that extra attack speed and extra power by being, or quote-unquote on fire. She even says the line, I'm on fire or I'm hot. And because of that, she gains that extra ability power. We'll see what happens with how he's able to do that, especially against an Uller that can stance change. And if the duo lane aggression is going to continue. As an early rotation here over by the Lil Noms is going to see Josh the Landlord kind of get caught out a little bit as Giannis on this Anubis not going to be able to deal much in the way of damage. But good poke by Bears on that one. Not exactly a successful gank into the mid lane. Ooh, ultimate by Omega going to be utilized just to kind of zone out. But it does keep him alive for a bit longer in that solo lane. Allows him to stay there and farm without too much loss of pressure so far.
And importantly, it did force out Tiamat's ultimate as well. That is always a very, very powerful thing to be forcing out early. Although, the Lil Noms may be 1 kill ahead, but I am still seeing a very even level.
Yeah,
it's starts to get a little bit of a lead, but the Ferrymen are doing a lot better of a job at keeping that under control. And especially as we look, just looking at the comp, Cerberus solo, Tsukiyomi jungle, Scylla mid, Odin support, and Soul carry. That is a team that can absolutely turn around and blast through the late game with the burst potential that Scylla has. The sheer shred for the Soul. The zone and setup. Odin, Cerberus, very difficult burden to deal with, as we actually will see the Soul coming out on that low HP Uller. But he will end up jumping away to save him. But
yeah, very, very, very tough there. Should have been able to clean that up, but that's kind of the life of a carry laner, of a carry. It's one auto, or it's one ability, or it's just a little thing here and there. This Herc is going to pop over with the Odin cage, and now the Achilles in a bit of trouble, as he is going to heal up that green buff, giving him a little bit of extra protections, going to make sure that he is going to survive a little bit longer, and now kind of devolve into a 3v3, and the Anubis will blink in as well. Ultimate going to be popped, and Bad News Bears going to bite the dust, as
Raptor
Josh the
Walls
Landlord going to pick up Landlord in mid lane as well.
that's a very dangerous pick to be hitting as well. The Lil Noms they're more than capable of pressuring that lead, especially on the Chiron, where he thrives so well in the early game. It can be quite a difficult climb to get back into the game once Chiron gets ahead like that.
And again, going Bluestone trans, so trying to go the unimaginative way with the build here. Probably building into an Aussie, as he doesn't have any health or lifesteal as of yet. But we'll see how that is utilized, as Divine Ruin is already online for the Scylla. Interesting that it's the Divine Ruin. Typically, at this point, maybe last patch even, as the Anubis is going to be picked up in the jungle, you might see Karen's coin, or maybe, depending on who it was, Book of Thoth, some kind of stack is probably what you'd be looking for.
Something that sets up the late game.
Yeah. But you do realize now with the Chiron in mid lane, you've already got to get that anti-life steal, the anti-healing online as quickly as possible, because he's got it built into his passive.
There are 4 people on that team that have an insane amount of healing. Achilles with his 2 heals quite a bit of the damage that he does, and he can consistently be throwing out abilities and dealing damage to you and poking you out of the fight. Chiron, as you said, with his passive, is continuously getting a little bit of that extra regen. That sustain can be very, very important. Anubis, I don't think I even have to explain this one. If I do, you need to go read a little bit, because it's very self-explanatory. Anubis lifesteal and healing is absurd on multiple levels.
And of course started Bancroft as well, too.
There's nothing else to start with on Anubis.
Yeah.
And Tiamat, with that Vampiric Shroud, she does have quite a bit of her own healing that you have to be careful of.
Yeah, and it looks like going into a Void Stone on top of that. So this it's an interesting Tiamat build, I'll put it that way. But it looks like it's going to be a hybrid build, and she is not discounting the power by any stretch.
Speaking of power, we just saw Anubis ult just blast onto that fortress.
Poyo, you might want to hit O. That's going to help with the health bars. Maybe not. Okay.
Looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties.
Yeah. But looks like Noms has destroyed, or sorry, yes, Noms have destroyed the Gold Fury, so they will get the first objective on the board. Try end, then. It's, when you typed in the names, by hitting those buttons, it adds and takes away certain things with the graphics. It's the weirdest thing. But anyway, we're gonna try and figure this one out and try and get those health bars back up there for you when you can. Looks like nope, that's not working.
It's got to be one of the. It's got to be one of the buttons that you clicked when typing the names in.
Yeah.
One of them controls it. Oh, they're back.
Oh, there it is.
I don't know which one you pressed. It looked like you pressed quite a few of them, but obviously it works.
It worked. That's what's important. It worked. Let's see what other work can get done here, as Ferrymen have a bit of work to catch up. They are down a little over 4k gold at this point. And they are down 6 kills to 1 to the little Noms. I'm trying to figure out a way, just in the back of my mind, where this can go, as again Omega Bulldog going to get picked up here by the little Noms. So now it's 7 to 1. I mean, looking across the board at what advantages do you have? You're down 3 levels in the mid lane, 1 in support, 1 in duo, 1 in solo, and now 1 in jungle. This is tough. This is very, very tough, as now you're going to see Lil Noms. It looks like Pabs is going to get caught out here 3v1. But again, even using the Odin ult, there's not a lot of punishment there. It's the CC with the follow-up damage, and we see the CC being utilized. The Odin cage is utilized, but there's just enough wiggle room, just enough dancing to get him out of trouble there. And Little Noms are going to take the Pyromancer now too. So the next objective off the board in favor of Little Noms, and the only thing left at this point is Fire Giant. So this one is going to be very, very difficult for. And now Raptor falls.
Speaking of unfortunate,
Yeah.
that was Baloosed on proc, killing Scylla in her ult. I'm a monster. That's. I think that's about the definition of unfortunate. This qualifies.
Yeah. There's.
You hate to see it.
Yeah, and there's certain things where you just kind of have to scratch your head and go, really, high res? Really? That's the way this thing works now? I know playing Medusa and having my ult backflip over and feather step over as the execute comes now onto the Odin, but you know, you kind of scratch your head and you go, so that's how this works now, high res? And even in this game, kind of going, okay, Lil Noms, that's the way this is going to work. That's the way this is going to go. And 11-1 now. It started out a little slow, but now the snowball has started to gain momentum here, as Omega is going to have a little bit more mana to work with, but not a ton. And that pressure is still there. I don't know what's going to happen here, as Satan OMFG is just going to say, you know what, I'm going to take the farm instead. Oh no, as nope.
Here, Bulldog. He's gonna have to go his way out of that one and use the last of his mana to jump away.
You know what? But that was great sidestepping there. That was, if he gets caught by any one of those abilities, if he gets knocked up, if he gets, you know, if he gets rooted in place, it was fatal. And instead, he's able to back and heal up. So as we see now, 13k experience difference, 9k gold difference. That is just devastating to see, as Pegleg, the Uller, are going to be able to leap out of the Odin cage, and yeah, that's the one god you're not going to be able to pin down on that Lil Noms roster. So, I mean, you kind of scratch your head and you go, okay, where do you go from here if you're Ferryman? You've got to take this game somehow. Where do you build? So I'm gonna put you square into the coach's box now, Jeering, for Ferrymen, and go, you're down 11-1. It's 14, just over 14 and a half, looking at 16 minutes now. How do you claw this one back?
There's always one though most often almost all of those options are very hard. I could see a trade of ADCs there. Beautiful play in that 1v2 on Terminator. Bad News Bears unfortunately will end up pulling the jungle. And Omega Bulldog will end up securing that kill on Josh the Landlord, so it actually turns into a 2v2 as we can see them chasing Bulldog on that Cerberus. It is going to have to run away from it. It is just a team on blinking and he's going to dive out of that Scylla. Monster forced to be moved out as they're all now trying to jump away from having the newest ultimate. Death Gaze is going to end up finishing off the kill on the Raptor. Bulldog now has to back up as the execute will end up coming out from Pabs. That was a great execute on his part. Finished off that kill nice and clean, and it will end up being a 2 for 4. But sorry to get sidetracked like that. But
No, not a problem.
but there are usually a couple of ways to get back to my game, but some of them are just worse. And really getting obviously it is technically a way to get back into the game. But really, the Ferrymen are able to rely on luck to get back into this one. This is going to be a grind to get back into. They're going to have to start taking control of these situations and force these team fights to go a little bit more in their favor rather than the Lil Noms just walking all over this turf. They're going to have to push them back out of their own grass, their own backyard, and take control of their area and slowly push themselves back into a situation where their late game power is enough to overshadow this early lead that the Lil Noms have picked up. And it's going to be an extremely difficult climb, but I think Ferrymen are capable of pulling off something like that. Because we'll actually see Piglet sneak back and Soul throwing the axe and quick landing. Soul's going to end up turning around, just a lot of damage. He's going to be forced to jump away, trying to avoid some of the damage. Soul's not ready to give up that yet. In this situation, Ferrymen, they have the skill, they have the teamwork required to make it happen. It's just going to be a very steep hill to climb to get themselves into that late game where the early lead that the Lil Noms have picked up won't matter enough. And they're going to have to be taking small, micro transactions to just pick off 1 or 2 people in the fight. And they're going to have to, especially forcing out those actives, as we now see Soul beating on his Older as he's healing quite a bit of his health. And will end up finalizing the kill on the big, beautiful way. As you now see, the silicon on Achilles, he's going to try and ult out the way as I'm a Monster also gets pulled up. So Yopi will end up the kill on the Anubis as he will end up falling to the Tiamat. As we now see very HP Achilles being dived by 3. The Tiamat is going to be here trying to kill Scylla though, and it will end up falling. Odin did end up falling as we now see 2-3 trades so far in favor of the Ferrymen, which is what they want. Odin is extremely low, so he's going to end up getting picked off by the Chiron just going under tower. The Cerberus Blink will end up coming out. That 3-for-3 trade, with Soul now having the ability to dish out some tower damage on that T2. These are the types of advantages the Ferrymen are going to want to see more of. They're getting at least even or even favorable trades in those team fights, where even if they lose 2 or 3, they can at least still get a very good objective out of it, whether it's just a Gold Fury, a couple T2 towers. They need to grind their way back into this, and they have to be very careful with these engagements, because the Lil Noms have been very powerful so far, and their display of power has put the Ferrymen into a position where taking those full-on 5v5 team fights does not go so well for them. So they're going to have to be more careful with the exact manners in which they take the fights.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question right now is what fights do you take and how can you take them in a timely manner? Like even right now, it's 4v2 and Bad News Bears is in a lot of trouble with that ultimate and he turns it around and that means he is going to dive and dive right to his death as now the Cerebral is going to be utilized. Beads will be used to make sure that Giannis and Pegleg are going to stay safe and sound as the Cerebral expended without much for return, but Giannis is going to fall and the Fire Giant's down to half health. I don't know if the Ferrymen know that.
They don't have any wars on it, and they don't have any members nearly close enough to that spot. So we'll end up falling to the Lil Noms without Ferrymen being able to respond as it's now returned. They're going to have to get out of this real quick.
Hab's getting very low though, and that is going to be
securing the kill with Achilles. But now the Tiamat ult is going to be dishing out a lot of damage. Cerberus will end up falling with the Tiamat. Now the Ferrymen are pretty much all the way over, so the Lil Noms all having the Fire Giant active. Soul's going to end up falling to the Pegleg. Chiron, giddy up, coming in. Very aggressive. Beats out dishing out a lot of damage. It's a very low level Tiamat is going to end up diving as well, as we see a lot of damage coming out. Will be enough to Odin will end up knocking her out of that fight. But will it be enough? We did still see a 3-for-2 trade where the Lil Noms did manage to secure that Fire Giant buff. That is not a good sign for the Ferrymen. It's not even done as Oler's now jumping in, trying to catch off the Tsukiyomi out of position.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most telling things on this side here is taking a look at that player damage and seeing the Scylla towards the bottom. That is an indication of how this game is going, because if you're the Ferryman, you need everybody firing on all cylinders. And the Scylla being a major damage dealer with the Crush, with the I'm a Monster, you need to have her hitting her abilities to effectively keep your team in this game, to take those team fights and to turn those team fights into your advantage. Because Little Noms will pick up another Fury. But as the objectives start to fall, as things are kind of getting out of hand right now, trying to find something as... Ooh, the beautiful turnaround there, but it is still going to mean the Bad News Bears is going to fall, so now it's a 4v3. And the Odin Cage utilized to zone out. The Uller will be able to get out of that without a problem.
A great play from the Ferrymen, though, is getting the number of people who have the Fire Giant buff down to 2 instead of 5. That is going to be very helpful for the defense. Will it be enough? They don't have that buff active. So the towers and phoenixes are going to fall very quickly.
And the biggest problem, though, is the 2 people that still have that Fire Giant buff are the 2 carries. It's going to be a Giannis, it's going to be Giannis, not Giannis. It is going to be Josh on the Chiron and Pegleg on the Uller, dealing massive amounts of damage. As here we go again, and the Phoenix is under siege.
Server Soul come out this time. We'll end up picking off Phoenix very little. Because Hercules also in the same position. Tornado will end up finishing off as he does the team up. This now Cerberus is also very low HP. He's gonna have to play very carefully here. Bulldog is having to back in very shortly here. And we will actually end up seeing security all of the team as well. So Cerberus taking a lot of damage from the falling to notice that is now Soul is forced to back out, being super low on the health bar. He's not gonna be able to give that up. Crush not able to take him out just in time. But the Soul will still end up being able to get out. Just a sliver of health left.
And the Phoenix will fall.
Yeah,
and are they going to be that bold is the question. As just not enough, even with the crush, but it is going to be enough with the Titan health.
Secured. They do have an and it went from a 4 to 2. As Achilles now showed up to be Hercules with the Odinal will end up coming out. So we'll end up finalizing the kill on the Anubis, which is going to be a very good pick for them. That's going to be one to defend this one. Since you can blink it and start holding in, Josh is going to have a lot of damage. He's going to have to do that top. The Achilles is going to try and zone in, but he's also doing a lot of poke in return. He's going to, he's going to have to hold out just to survive.
The biggest problem with trying to kill that Achilles right now is that health bar is more black bars than it is red. I mean, that is a lot of health on that Achilles. A lot of health.
That is a massive 3,400 total.
Yeah. Trying to shred through that is going to be a real problem. And speaking of problems, there goes the Pyromancer.
Ferrymen were able to secure this one. That's one small step forward, taking as often as they can to get back in this game.
Pabs is still able to dip, dash, dive, duck, and dodge, but is not going to be able to get out of that one as the Odin Cage comes down. Satan going to be zoned out just a little bit, but as 4 men come out, 4 men strong are running away. And a little bit of damage onto the Tsukiyomi as the arrows will fly from the Chiron. A little bit of poke damage, but it's not going to be enough. As Little Noms will zone out, and now they have control of the Fire Giant Pit with a Chiron and a Tiamat right there.
And Anubis is also right next to it, just stealing that yellow buff. He's also very dangerous to contend with. He can dish out a lot of damage, and especially with Soul being on the other side of the map, picking up the Drugger right now. They see her over there. They're making
Yep, 27.5 minutes so far. This one here, let's see what's going to be utilized. If they're going to utilize, it doesn't even look like they're going to use an ultimate to try and secure this thing. They don't see anybody trying to contest. So they are just going to pick it up and walk away. Trying to press an advantage. It is probably more logical since they do have the wave coming up in that right-hand side to push right. but instead they want to take this fight. They say, Ferrymen, we don't care. You're not going to beat us in a straight 5v5 fight. So we are going to push you as hard as we can. We got the Fire Giant buff, we got all the other buffs, and we've stripped as much of the farm away as we possibly can. So here comes the pressure. Now let's see if you can bear it.
So what on to the Noobs very quickly. Took Yomio coming out as a response to try and take out the Noobs, and he'll be successful. Now he's going to take a lot of damage. He's getting poked out, but QSL will end up finalizing that kill. Combat teammates. So he's also going to drop it. Get them off. So, team is that good part. Mega Venom securing the kill on fourth. You know, Fallen Titan is now half HP, going on third. As we see a lot of damage to the right marks will end up falling. As now Kyra is dashing in his way over. He's going to try and engage the Titan. Still a monster trying to get the kill, but not quite able to finish off. He goes and the Titan will end up falling with the
They
team.
didn't hold anything back.
That is all she wrote for tonight. 28:53 the final time. 28-13 our score. 15k gold difference, 16k experience difference, and this one really didn't look like it was out of hand for the little Noms really at all throughout this game.
It was not out of hand, but it was certainly a difficult climb for the Ferrymen, and they just weren't able to pull it off in time.
Yeah, definitely a little bit closer in terms of kills, but at the end of the day, the Titans still fell twice, and that's what this game is about. Kudos to both Terminator trying to do something on that soul and getting fairly even, 4-4 and 2. But I think the real telling thing with the player damage is, you know, Scylla ended up with 14k, and on top of it, I mean, looking at the counterpart here, 18k from Josh the Landlord and almost 30,000 damage from Dual Peg Leg on that Uller. He was a monster that game, just dishing out what he could. I mean, that's not really to discount anybody that played this game. This is a really high-level game, to be honest. Very, very difficult to try and pull out one person to say, oh, this person was amazing or that person was amazing, because when you look at things, it's across the board pretty even. I think the biggest issue that we really have to look at was the coordination, ultimately. I think Little Noms was actually more coordinated than Ferrymen. I know earlier, before the game, we were talking about how the Ferrymen looked really coordinated the first week. They looked really put together. They knew where everybody was kind of fitting into the system that they had, and it looked really polished already. And now they come up against the Little Noms, and it's like, wait a second, something ain't quite right here. You're seeing individual plays, dives that weren't quite clean, things that didn't quite go together. And maybe they'll be able to clean that up for week 3, but as for right now, week 2, well, that one's all done and dusted.
The Lil Noms coming out with a resounding 2-0 victory. I think, personally, if this game that we just saw was game 1, I think the Ferrymen still would have had a good chance in the set. But the game 1 defeat that they saw, I think, had a very lasting impact on the set. Not just because it's a game that they won. Ignoring that completely, I think the level of defeat that the Ferrymen felt was more demoralizing, and it hurt them significantly going into the second game. They're doing a fantastic job at correcting what went wrong, but they just couldn't manage to pull it out. And unfortunately, the Lil Noms were not showing any mercy.
Yeah, so tough game all around. So one thing as we right before we close out, who is your MVP for this set?
My MVP for this set. Let me eat Janice with the Anubis jungle. I'm joking. I'm joking with you, right? I'm joking. I'm joking. But in all seriousness, joke aside, that nobody thought was funny, I think I'm gonna have to give it to Pegleg.
Hmm.
Both games, his play from the ADC lane was phenomenal, and it was more than enough to give his entire team the pressure that they needed. Because in game one, he was doing so well on his own that they didn't have to worry about ganking his lane, and they could focus their attention on Bulldog in the solo lane being 2 levels up. And they were able to focus their effort on bringing him and keeping him in check, that if they were able to put every single lane at even just a small deficit to where they were just taking control of the map. Game two,
Yeah.
game two with 29,000 player damage. I think those numbers speak for themselves. He had almost 4,000 structure damage. He was just a monster that could not be stopped. Forget Scylla. Pegleg was the real monster on this one.
Yeah. Oh man. I actually, and I hate to say this, but I actually think that without the jungle play of Giannis, I don't think that this game goes as lopsided as it is. Um, I think that the play, especially in the first game, I think the biggest difference we saw was when the ganks were happening, there were successful ganks and counter ganks by little Noms. Whereas when the initiation was trying to come out from Ferrymen, they would go, they would not get the kill, they wouldn't get the farm, and that's where the wheels started to come off in the early game. But yeah, it really is tough. It really, really is tough. Um to see it go this direction. And I'm actually going to give my MVP to Giannis on this one. I think your MVP pick of Pegleg is completely viable. I thought he had two excellent games, but I don't think it goes as lopsided as it was if Giannis does not play as well as he does both in the first game on the Fenrir and in the second game on the Anubis. I think he just cleaned up way too well.
I think it's safe to say that taking either one of them out of the situation would have turned it a lot more in favor of the Ferrymen. Both of them did a phenomenal job for just keeping their team in the fight and giving them the lead that they needed to take the game away.
Hmm. Yep, completely agree. Before we wrap this thing up, any final words?
Polo actually requested to announce their
Mic on.
MVP pick, so let's hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My MVP is actually Omega. Seemed like he was the only player on Ferrymen, a little biased, but only player on Ferrymen to even bring hope for the team in the early and mid game. Terminator definitely game two did well in the ones against Dual Peg, but early mid game when Ferrymen had clearly no hope in the beginning, Omega was like the main factor. He was their win factor, but fortunately they lost both games. But looking at all 10 players, I would first pick Omega on my squad.
Yep. Completely agree with that one. Omega has turned out to be the
Mic
rock
off.
on that team. And even now, even in an 0-2 losing effort, Omega still played solid. I mean, I got to go with that. He still played solid. So, anything else, gentlemen?
I think I would first pick the Anubis jungle on my team. That's just me. That sounds like something I would do.
Well, trolling aside, I want to thank Poyoya Rose and Cheering Lamb this evening for coming out to cast the very first game of week number 2 between the Little Noms and the Ferrymen. I've been Red Sniper 23. Thank you guys. We appreciate every one of you who are here watching, and we'll see you next time here in the QSL. Again, Little Noms with the 2-0 victory over the Ferrymen. Have a good night, guys. See you later.
Thank you all for joining us. Have a good night, man.